The lecture hall aboard the Academy station was filled with the soft hum of conversation as students from across the galaxy settled into their seats. The chamber itself was an architectural marvel, designed with floating and adaptive seating to accommodate species of all shapes and sizes. Professor, a scholar with centuries of experience, stood at the center of the room. His tall, chitinous frame gleamed under the soft glow of the overhead lights as he activated the massive central holographic display. The murmurs quieted as celestial bodies flickered into existence, planets rotating slowly in the projected image. With a wave of his hand, the professor expanded the display to highlight a particular category of planets, their labels glowing ominously in red. As we continue our study of planetary classifications, began, his mandibles clicking slightly as he spoke, we arrive at a most intriguing and controversial subject. A ripple of unease spread through the gathered students. The very term carried an unspoken warning. Were places spoken of in hushed tones, where nature itself seemed to wage war against life, where evolution took no prisoners, and only the most relentless organisms survived. Let the weight of the term settle before continuing. Most are barren wastelands, too toxic, too violent, or too unstable for advanced civilizations to take root. But there exists an anomaly within this classification. With a flick of his clawed hand, the hologram shifted, zooming into a specific region of the galaxy. The image stabilized, revealing a single, unassuming planet. A world of swirling blue oceans, vast green landscapes, and skies. Earth, he said, his voice laced with intrigue. A hush fell over the students. Many had heard the name before, though few truly understood the implications. Earth, home to humanity. The only known to produce a species. The only world to defy every expectation. A student, a creature resembling an amphibious cephalopod, raised a tentative tentacle. Professor, I thought, were considered inhospitable. How did they survive? Mandibles curled into what could be interpreted as a smirk. An excellent question. By all logic, they should not have. He gestured toward the display, and the projection shifted again. The serene image of Earth was replaced with a montage of raw, untamed chaos. Hurricanes the size of continents, towering infernos devouring entire forests, earthquakes splitting open the ground, volcanic eruptions darkening the skies for years at a time. The alien students flinched as these catastrophic events played out before them, their expressions morphing from curiosity to horror. Their planet is a world of extremes, continued. A place where the very climate seeks to eradicate life, where apex predators roam freely, and where disease has evolved into an arms race of infection and immunity. The display zoomed in on a vast stretch of open savanna, where a pack of wolves pursued a herd of massive creatures with curled horns. The students leaned in, expecting the inevitable. Predator takes prey. But something unexpected happened. Tiny figures emerged from the grasslands. Not the fastest, not the strongest. Yet, they worked together, coordinating their movements, using crude tools, outmaneuvering creatures vastly superior to them in physical power. They did not flee from the predators. They competed with them. A student whose species hailed from a water world let out a sound that could only be described as disbelief. They hunt things bigger than themselves. Indeed, confirmed. And they do not stop there. The images changed again. Humans in primitive furs, crafting weapons from stone. Humans in armor, waging wars with steel and fire. Humans launching themselves into the void of space, forging ahead despite every obstacle their own world threw at them. They did not merely survive. They thrived. They adapted. They learned to control fire, to shape matter, to bend nature itself to their will. A student from the species, a naturally telepathic race, visibly recalled. But why? Why endure such a world? Why not live? Gaze darkened with something almost akin to admiration. Because they are a product of their world. Hardship is not a burden to them. It is their nature. They are the only known species that does not see adversity as a barrier, but as a challenge. The room was silent, save for the quiet hum of the hologram. Students glanced at each other, the weight of the revelation sinking in. They had spent their lives in controlled environments, in civilizations that valued stability and peace. And yet, here was a species that had been molded by chaos, tempered by catastrophe, and had emerged not just unbroken, but stronger. A reptilian student shifted uncomfortably in his seat. If their world is so dangerous, wouldn't they fear the rest of the galaxy? A quiet chuckle echoed from the back of the room. Heads turned toward the sound. Sitting there, feet propped up on the desk, was a human student named Lucas. He had been silent throughout the lesson, arms crossed, listening with an amused expression. Now, he leaned forward, his grin widening as he met nervous gaze. "Nah," Lucas said, his voice casual, yet carrying the weight of certainty. "Compared to Earth, most planets are easy mood." Didn't interject. He simply let the words settle. Because, as the students now understood, it wasn't humans who should fear the galaxy. The research chamber aboard the Academy station was filled with an uneasy silence, broken only by the soft hum of machinery and the occasional flicker of the holographic display. A handful of alien students gathered around a large circular table, their gazes fixed on the glowing screen. Across the center, Earth rotated slowly, its vibrant blues and greens stark against the void of space. Despite its inviting appearance, the data scrolling beside it painted a far more terrifying picture. Hostile terrain, apex predators, deadly weather patterns, and a history of conflict unlike anything in the known galaxy. The student folded his scaled arms, his slitted yellow eyes narrowed. "I still don't understand how they survived long enough to achieve space travel. Even with their adaptability, they should have been wiped out by disease, by predators, by their own planet's instability." The student with bioluminescent tendrils tapped at the console, pulling up a detailed timeline of human history. The images that flashed before them were chaotic. Ancient wars waged with bronze and iron, towering cities rising and crumbling, plagues that decimated populations, natural disasters reshaping entire continents. And yet, at every turn, humanity endured. They didn't just persist, they advanced. "It makes no sense," muttered, shaking his head. "Other species facing a fraction of these conditions have gone extinct, yet they only seem to grow stronger." The doors to the research chamber slid open with a soft hiss, and Lucas strolled in, hands in his pockets, a protein bar hanging from his lips. The human exchange student had become something of an enigma to his classmates. He had an easygoing nature, always joking, always grinning, but there was something unsettling about his confidence, about the way he carried himself like nothing in the universe could truly shake him. He raised a brow at the gathered students, noticing their tense expressions and the scrolling disaster reel of his. "Lemme guess," he said around a bite of food. "You guys are still trying to figure out why we're not dead." A cautious, tilted her feathery head. "We've been analyzing your history, your biology, and your environmental conditions," she admitted, her large black eyes flickering with apprehension. "And we've come to the conclusion that humans should not exist." Lucas snorted, plopping down into a chair across from them. "Yeah, I get that a lot." Tail flicked in irritation. "This isn't a joke, human. By all logic, your species should have perished long ago. Your immune systems are forced to fight off a constant barrage of microscopic threats, your bodies are inefficient compared to other species, and your own history is filled with endless wars and destruction." Lucas leaned back, resting his arms behind his head. "Okay, yeah, all true. But you're missing the most important part." He jabbed a thumb at the screen. "We don't give up." Frowned. "What do you mean?" Lucas gestured toward the images. "You look at all that and see disaster after disaster. We see progress. Every time something tried to wipe us out, famine, disease, war, nature itself, we figured out how to survive it. Hell, not just survive. We turned it into an advantage." "Plagues?" They made us create medicine and sanitation. Natural disasters. They forced us to engineer better structures and systems. Predators? We dumb until we became the apex species. Ruffled her feathers uneasily. But you fight among yourselves constantly. Lucas gave a yeah, and conflict drives innovation. Every time we fought, we came out stronger, more advanced. We learned from our mistakes, we adapted, and we never let setbacks stop us. He tapped the screen, pulling up an image of a human standing on the moon, looking back at Earth. And after all that, after surviving everything the universe threw at us, we didn't just stay put. We looked up and thought, let's go there. The alien students exchanged uncertain glances. It wasn't arrogance in his tone, it was fact. Humans had not only conquered their world, they had refused to be confined by it. Where other species sought safety, humans sought challenges. Voss was quiet, but there was a note of growing realization. You don't see adversity the way we do. Lucas grinned. Bingo. He leaned forward, placing his hands on the table. Look, I get it. Most species evolve in stable environments, right? They grow comfortable, they optimize for survival in predictable conditions. But Earth? It never gave us that luxury. Every day, every century, it tried to wipe us out. And instead of rolling over, we got back up. We learned. We got better. Adversity is what made us who we are. Stared at the screen, at the images of war and triumph, of disaster and ingenuity. So you're saying your strength comes from struggle. Lucas nodded. Exactly. We don't fear the impossible. We don't run from the unknown. We tackle it. That's why we're here. That's why we made it to the stars. Silence hung over the room, heavy with the weight of understanding. The aliens had spent their entire lives avoiding danger, seeking stability, believing that safety was the key to survival. But here was a species that had thrived in the exact opposite conditions. Exhaled slowly. I think I understand now. Lucas smirked. Good. Because trust me, if there's one thing you guys should take away from this, it's that if a human ever says this is nothing compared to Earth, you should probably run. The nervous chuckles that followed weren't just amusement. They were realization. Because for the first time, the alien students truly grasped what it meant that Earth was called a, and what it meant that humanity had survived it. The auditorium was packed with students from across the galaxy, their varied forms filling the tiered seating as they murmured in hushed tones. The topic of today's seminar was one that had intrigued and unnerved them ever since they first learned of the human species, Earth, and how its inhabitants had defied all logic to become an interstellar power. At the center of the stage stood Professor Etal, his iridescent carapace glinting under the artificial lights. He adjusted his translator device before addressing the crowd. Today, he began, his voice a rhythmic chittering that the translator smoothed into an authoritative tone. We have the unique opportunity to hear first-hand accounts from one of the most enigmatic species in the known galaxy. A species that has defied extinction time and time again. A species that considers the very world that tried to kill them for millennia their home. The murmur among the students grew louder as the guest speaker stepped onto the stage. Lucas, the human exchange student, strolled out with the easy confidence that unnerved so many of his peers. Unlike the formal attire of most scholars and speakers, he wore his usual casual clothing, simple cargo pants and a fitted jacket, giving the impression that he was about to tell a story at a bar rather than speak before some of the brightest young minds in the universe. He adjusted the headset microphone, scanning the crowd with a smirk before speaking. So, he began, piecing slightly. I hear you guys have been trying to figure out why humans haven't gone extinct. There was a collective shift among the audience. Some students tensed at his directness, others leaned forward in fascination. Lucas wasn't like other guest speakers. He wasn't here to regurgitate research papers or recite statistics. He was here to give them something they couldn't get from a data file. You've all read about Earth, he continued, pulling up a holographic display behind him. The screen filled with images of dense jungles, vast deserts, towering mountain ranges, and frozen tundras. It was a planet of extremes, a world that, by galactic standards, was nothing short of hostile. You know about the earthquakes, the volcanoes, the storms. You know about the predators, the diseases, the poisonous plants, the bacteria that could kill a being 5 times our size. You probably think it's a miracle we made it this far. A ripple of uneasy agreement passed through the crowd. Lucas smirked, knowing exactly how to drive his point home. Well, I'm here to tell you, it's not a miracle. It's just what we do. With a few taps on his wrist device, the images on the screen change. Instead of landscapes, they now showed humans in action. Climbers scaling impossible heights, divers plunging into the abyss, soldiers braving war zones, firefighters running into burning buildings, scientists studying deadly viruses in sealed labs. The students watched in stunned silence as the scenes played out before them. You see, Lucas continued, his tone shifting from casual to intense. We don't just survive danger. We seek it out. We challenge it. We look at a volcano and think, I bet I can figure out how that works. We see an ocean trench and go, let's build something that can take us to the bottom. We see an animal that could tear us apart, and we don't run, we study it, understand it, and if necessary, figure out how to fight it. A student from the back, a reptilian, raised a trembling hand. But why? Lucas turned toward the student, tilting his head. Why not? The hesitated. Most species avoid danger. It is the logical response. Survival instinct dictates that beings should not expose themselves to unnecessary threats. Lucas chuckled. Yeah, that's what makes us different. He stepped closer to the edge of the stage, hands in his pockets. We figured out early on that the universe isn't safe. Earth sure as hell wasn't. So instead of hiding, instead of waiting for something to come along and wipe us out, we adapted. We didn't just evolve to survive the threats, we evolved to overcome them. The screen behind him changed again, showing a timeline of human technological advancements. From fire to steel, from gunpowder to spaceflight, from medicine to artificial intelligence. You think predators were a problem? Lucas scoffed. We became the most dangerous hunters on the planet. You think disease should have wiped us out? We discovered vaccines. You think nature could stop us? We built cities that could withstand earthquakes, ships that could cross the deadliest oceans, and machines that could take us beyond our own sky. There was silence in the auditorium. A heavy, thoughtful silence. The hesitantly spoke up from the front row. And now you are among the stars. But what if you encounter something beyond your control? What if you finally meet a force that you cannot defeat? Lucas gave her a slow, knowing smile. Then we'll do what we've always done. We'll learn. We'll adapt. We'll figure it out. And we'll come back stronger. The implications hung in the air. The aliens in the audience, most of whom had grown up in stable environments, carefully managed worlds, places where danger was rare and problems were solved with cautious deliberation, were now faced with an undeniable truth. Humans didn't just survive adversity. They thrived in it. Professor, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Then it is not Earth that makes you dangerous. It is what Earth forced you to become. Lucas grinned. Exactly. The professor nodded solemnly, turning to address the students. Let this be a lesson to you all. The term does not merely define a place, it defines the creatures who emerge from it. And if history has taught us anything, it is that such creatures are not to be underestimated. Lucas took a step back, allowing those words to settle in. He could see it in their eyes now, the realization, the respect, and, just beneath the surface, the quiet, lingering fear. And for the first time, the alien students truly understood why Earth was called a